The CEO's office door slammed shut behind her with an echo that seemed to reverberate through the entire building. It felt like the world had suddenly grown too small. Claire stood frozen for a moment, her pulse hammering in her ears. She hadn't expected it to happen this way, not after everything she'd put into this job, into this company. Yet, here she was, unceremoniously kicked out, her future uncertain, and her life taking an unexpected turn. Her breath caught in her throat, a wave of dizziness sweeping over her. She reached for the back of the chair, steadying herself. The room was spinning, but it wasn't just from the physical exhaustion that had been building for weeks. It was the shock, the overwhelming, raw shock of the words that had just left his mouth. "You're pregnant, Claire. You can't handle the workload anymore. I need you to leave today. It's best for everyone." His words had hit her like a punch in the gut, his cold tone devoid of any empathy. The man who had been so supportive during her early days in the company, the one who had promised her a bright future, was now the one throwing her out the door. She couldn't understand how things had gotten here. Claire had always prided herself on her work ethic. She'd spent years climbing the corporate ladder, earning respect, even admiration, from her colleagues. She had worked nights, weekends, missed family events, all to prove she was the best, to show her commitment to the company. And for what? To be dismissed without a second thought, just because she was pregnant? Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. She didn't have time for tears. Not now. She glanced at the clock. It was 2:30 p.m. The office was already quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights the only sound in the empty hallway. Her mind raced as she grabbed her purse from the desk. She couldn't believe it. How had it come to this? Her heart was pounding as she walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the otherwise silent hallway. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. How was she supposed to tell her family? What would she do now? Was there any way to fix this? As she reached the front doors of the building, Claire paused. The cool air hit her face like a slap. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, was now nothing more than a shattered dream. The sting of betrayal cut deep. She had trusted him, and he had destroyed that trust in a matter of minutes. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She stared at the screen, her finger hovering over her mother's number. She needed someone to talk to, someone who could make sense of all this. But would her mother even understand? Her parents had always been proud of her success. How could she explain that it had all been for nothing? She put the phone back in her bag, shaking her head. No, she couldn't call yet. Not until she figured out what to do next. Claire made her way to the parking lot, the distant hum of traffic in the background. The world felt like it was moving around her, while she stood still, paralyzed by uncertainty. She couldn't afford to stand there for too long. She needed a plan. She needed answers. As she approached her car, she noticed something strange, a black sedan parked a few spaces away. It was too quiet, too still. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't recognize the car, nor did she remember seeing it when she had arrived this morning. But there was something about it that sent a chill down her spine. Her breath caught in her throat. What was going on? Why did she feel like she was being watched? The car had no markings, no visible signs that it belonged to anyone she knew. It was a sleek, polished vehicle, the kind you saw in movies but rarely in real life. Claire's heart started to race again. She didn't know why, but something about the car felt off. Her instincts screamed at her to get into her car and drive away. But instead, she stood there, her hand resting on the door of her car, staring at the sedan. Before she could make up her mind, a figure emerged from the shadows. A man, tall, dressed in a dark suit, his face partially obscured by the brim of a hat. He walked slowly toward her, his steps deliberate, almost too precise. Claire Anderson, his voice was smooth, calm, and oddly familiar, though she couldn't place it. Her stomach churned. This wasn't a coincidence. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaky but trying to maintain control. The man smiled, a slow, unsettling grin that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm someone who knows about your recent dismissal," he said, his tone cryptic. "I think we should talk." "Talk? About what?" Claire's heart skipped a beat. She took a cautious step back, unsure of who this man was or what he wanted from her. She wanted to scream, to ask him how he knew about what had just happened, but the words stuck in her throat. "I don't know you," she said, trying to stay calm. The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "You should open this," he said, holding it out toward her. Claire hesitated, her mind racing. Who was this person? And why did it feel like her entire world was being pulled out from under her? Her fingers trembled as she took the envelope. It was sealed with a wax insignia she didn't recognize. The weight of it felt heavy in her hands. "Why are you giving this to me?" she asked, still unsure if she should open it. The man smiled again, that eerie smile. "Because, Claire, what you've just experienced is only the beginning of something much bigger. Much more dangerous." Claire's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't breathe. She felt the ground shift beneath her feet as if the very reality she had known was slipping away. She needed answers. She needed to understand what was happening. "Who are you?" she repeated, her voice more forceful this time. The man took a step closer, his eyes piercing through her. "You'll know soon enough." Without another word, he turned and walked back to the sedan, disappearing inside. The engine roared to life, and the car sped off into the distance, leaving Claire standing there, the envelope still in her hands, her mind reeling. Her fingers shook as she tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. She unfolded it, her eyes scanning the neatly typed words. "You've been removed from the company because of what you know. They are watching you now. You are in danger." Claire's breath caught in her throat. Her heart pounded in her chest. What was this? Who was behind all of this? The world felt like it was crumbling around her. The mystery of her sudden firing was no longer just a betrayal, it was something far more dangerous. And Claire had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole went. Claire stood frozen in the parking lot, the envelope clutched tightly in her trembling hands. The words on the sheet she had just read were still echoing in her mind. "You've been removed from the company because of what you know. They are watching you now. You are in danger." Her stomach twisted, not just from the shock of being fired, but from the eerie implication of the note. She looked down at the crumpled paper in her hands, her heart racing. What did it all mean? Who was behind this, and why had they gone to such lengths to get her out of the company? She glanced around, her breath shallow. The parking lot was empty now, save for the lonely black sedan that had driven away. The normal hum of the city felt distant, as if the entire world had just shifted, leaving her standing on the edge of something far deeper and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. "Who would want to hurt me?" she thought, feeling a deep sense of unease settle in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She turned quickly, scanning her surroundings, but there was no one in sight. The street ahead was clear, and the building she had just left stood like a silent witness to everything that had transpired. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was lurking just out of sight. A sudden thought gripped her: had she made a mistake coming outside alone? The man, whoever he was, had made it clear that she was now in danger. But what kind of danger? And why was he so calm about it? Was he working with the company, or was there something else going on? Her mind raced as she made her way to her car. She needed to get out of there, to put some distance between herself and the mystery that was unfolding around her. She quickly slid into the driver's seat, starting the engine, her hands still shaking. She glanced at the rearview mirror and, for a split second, swore she saw the dark figure of the man standing at the edge of the parking lot, watching her. But when she looked again, there was nothing. The lot was empty. She took a deep breath and pulled out of the parking spot, the tires squealing slightly as she sped out of the lot. Her mind was in overdrive as she drove, trying to make sense of everything. Why had she been fired? It wasn't just a simple matter of not being able to handle the workload anymore, as her boss had claimed. There had to be more to it. Something hidden behind the cold decision to remove her from the company. Her phone buzzed in her bag, pulling her from her thoughts. She reached for it, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the name on the screen. Mom. She hesitated. Her mother had always been her rock, the one person she could count on no matter what. But how could she explain this? How could she tell her mother that her life had just been turned upside down, and that she was now being threatened by someone she didn't even know? She pressed the green button to answer. Mom? Claire, her mother's voice came through the phone, soft but with an edge of concern. Where are you? You sound off. Claire didn't want to worry her mother. Not yet. Not until she had more answers. I'm just on my way home. I had a weird day at work, that's all. Her mother's voice softened. What happened? I was let go, Claire said, her throat tightening. Just like that. He said I couldn't handle the workload because I'm pregnant. And now, there's this note. A man gave it to me in the parking lot. It says I'm in danger. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Her mother didn't speak right away, as though processing the weight of what Claire had just said. Finally, her voice cracked through the silence. What do you mean, danger? Who would threaten you? I don't know, Mom. I don't know who that man was. But he knows about the firing. And he knows something that I don't. I don't feel safe. Her mother's voice grew more urgent. Claire, don't you dare go back to that place. Do you hear me? You need to stay somewhere safe. I'll come pick you up. Just stay there. I'm fine, Claire said, forcing her voice to sound more reassuring than she felt. I'll figure it out. I'm just going to head home and lie low for a while. I'll be okay. You don't know that, her mother insisted. I'm coming to get you. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Claire was about to argue, but the line went dead. She looked at her phone, feeling a sense of unease creep over her again. It wasn't just the note. It wasn't just the firing. It was the sudden urgency that had filled her mother's voice. Why was she so worried? She wasn't a paranoid person. Why did she feel like there was something more to this? She glanced at the road ahead. The city was bustling with life, people moving about their business, unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded in her life. As she drove, her thoughts wandered to the man, the note, the firing, and everything she had worked for. The more. As much as they used to, he was the one person who could offer a level-headed perspective. If anyone could help her make sense of what was happening, it was him. Claire hit the call button and waited, her fingers nervously tapping against the edge of her coffee cup. It rang 3 times before James picked up. Claire? His voice was groggy, thick with sleep. What's going on? You sound off. She exhaled sharply. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. There was a pause, then a soft sigh. What happened? I was fired yesterday, she said quickly, her words tumbling out in a rush. But it's not just that. There's this note, and this man who gave it to me. He said I'm in danger. And now, Mr. Dalton, my boss, wants to meet with me today. He sent me a message. It's all connected, James. I can feel it. But I don't know what to do. She heard him shift in his chair, and then the sound of him sitting up. Okay, slow down. You're telling me a lot here. You're in danger. Someone gave you a note? And now your boss wants to meet with you? You're sure all this is connected? I don't know, Claire admitted, her voice shaky. But it feels like it is. The man, he knew about my firing, James. He knew about the pregnancy. I don't know who he is, but I'm scared. I have no idea why someone would target me like this. Okay, he said calmly, his voice grounded. First, let's take a step back. You need to think carefully about everything. Who else knows about your pregnancy besides your boss? Only a handful of people at work, and my family. That's it, Claire answered, her stomach turning at the thought of someone she trusted being behind this. I'm going to need you to give me all the details, Claire. Every little thing you can remember. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything about the firing, the note, this man who gave it to you. And don't leave anything out. I'm coming to you, Claire said before she could second-guess herself. I'll tell you everything in person. We need to figure this out before it's too late. All right, James said, his voice firm now. I'll be at the station. Get here when you can. And don't go anywhere alone. Understand? She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. I'll be careful. The line went dead, and Claire's mind went back to the events of the day before. The note. The man. And now, her boss. She had to find out why she was targeted, and why things were moving so fast. Hours later. By the time Claire arrived at James' office, her nerves were on edge. She wasn't used to feeling this out of control, especially not in situations that involved her job. Claire had always prided herself on being sharp, organized, and able to handle pressure. But now? She felt like a puppet being pulled in all directions, with no idea who was holding the strings. James' office was quiet, tucked away in a corner of the police station. It was a small room filled with paperwork, case files, and an old coffee machine that always seemed to be on the verge of breaking. He was standing by his desk when she walked in, his eyes scanning her as though he was trying to make sense of the whirlwind she had just walked into. Tell me everything, he said, his voice calm but serious. Claire took a deep breath and began recounting everything, from the moment her boss had fired her, to the strange man who had handed her the note, and the cryptic message from Mr. Dalton. She explained how the man had known about the firing before it even happened, and how she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. When she finished, James leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming against the desk. This doesn't make any sense, he muttered. If it were just about your firing, that'd be one thing. But the note? The man? There's something else going on here, Claire. Something you don't know. Claire frowned. What do you mean? Someone's playing a game, he said, his tone hardening. And you're the pawn. Claire's heart sank. She didn't want to believe it, but deep down, she knew James was right. There was something far more dangerous happening, and she had no idea how to stop it. Later that day, Claire had spent the entire afternoon with James, going over every detail and trying to piece together what was really happening. They had even pulled some public records on the company, trying to find any connections that could explain the bizarre events surrounding her firing. But all they had found so far were dead ends. Nothing connected anyone at the company to any criminal activity. And the man who had given her the note was a ghost, no trace, no background information. Claire sat at a small coffee shop, absently stirring her drink. She had been sitting there for nearly an hour, her thoughts a jumble of confusion and fear. The clink of the door opening broke her concentration. Claire's head snapped up, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw a figure enter the shop. It was the man from the parking lot. Her breath caught in her throat. What was he doing here? He walked toward her, his expression unreadable, as always. Claire's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to let fear control her. She had to know what was going on. She had to confront him. "Why are you following me?" Claire demanded, her voice shaky but firm. He stopped in front of her, glancing around the shop before his gaze settled on her. "I'm not following you, Claire," he said softly. "I'm here because you're in danger. You need to listen to me. There's something you don't know." She stood up, her pulse racing. "I don't need you to tell me what I already know. I need answers." "Then come with me," he said, his voice low. "I can help you, but only if you're willing to listen." She hesitated. Should she trust him? Or should she run? Claire made her decision. "All right," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "I'm listening." Claire followed the man, her heart hammering in her chest with each step. The coffee shop had faded into the background as the noise of her racing thoughts filled her ears. She tried to keep her composure, but everything about this encounter was unsettling. Who was this man? Why was he so sure she was in danger? And why had he approached her after everything that had happened? They walked down a narrow street, the city's typical hum fading into the background as they ventured deeper into an older, less traveled part of town. The buildings here were aged, their brick facades weathered by time. Claire's shoes clicked sharply on the uneven pavement, the sound a stark contrast to the eerie silence that hung between them. She glanced at the man again, his face as unreadable as it had been when they first met in the parking lot. She didn't know whether to be terrified or to trust him. "What do you want from me?" Claire finally broke the silence, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and frustration. "Why are you following me? What do you know about my firing? And who are you?" He didn't immediately respond. Instead, he continued walking, his long strides carrying him ahead of her. She had to quicken her pace to keep up, but the man didn't seem to notice. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of silence, he stopped in front of an old, nondescript building. It looked abandoned, with dusty windows and a faded sign hanging loosely on the door. It was the kind of place that could easily be overlooked, tucked away from the busy streets of the city. "This is where we need to talk," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. Claire hesitated, her instinct screaming at her to turn around and run. But something kept her rooted to the spot, a combination of curiosity and the nagging feeling that her life had already been turned upside down. It was too late to walk away now. She needed answers, and this man, whoever he was, seemed to be the only one who could provide them. She swallowed hard and nodded. "Fine. But I'm not going in there alone." The man didn't argue. He turned the doorknob and pushed the door open with ease, the old hinges creaking in protest. The air inside smelled musty, as if the building hadn't been used in years. Claire stepped into the dimly lit space, her eyes adjusting to the lack of light. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic outside. "Sit," the man said, pointing to an old chair near a dusty table. He took a seat across from her, folding his hands together in a way that made him seem calm, collected, almost too composed for the circumstances. Claire lowered herself into the chair, still feeling the tight grip of unease. She waited for him to speak, her gaze locked on his, searching for any hint of what was really going on. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest, her heart beating faster with every second that passed in silence. "I know you don't trust me," he began, his voice calm but tinged with something colder. "But you need to understand something. There are people in that company who want to make sure you never talk again. You've uncovered something they don't want out in the open. And that's why you're being targeted." Claire's mind reeled. "What are you talking about? What could I possibly know? I was just a receptionist at that company. I barely even spoke to the higher-ups." The man leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "It's not what you know, it's what you saw. What you uncovered without realizing it. Do you remember the day you were let go? The strange conversations you overheard? The people who were more concerned with your pregnancy than your work? Claire felt a sudden chill creep up her spine. She had thought those moments were insignificant at the time, just small, random interactions. But now, in the light of everything that had happened, she realized how strange they had really been. She had overheard a conversation between Mr. Dalton and one of the higher-ups about clearing up some loose ends. At the time, she had assumed it was about office gossip or restructuring. But now, the way the man was speaking, it all seemed far more sinister. "Tell me what you know," Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't care about your secrets. Just tell me the truth." The man sat back in his chair, his expression hard to read. He didn't seem angry, just resigned, as if this conversation had played out in his mind 1,000 times before. He ran a hand through his hair, looking away for a moment, as if deciding whether or not he should continue. "There are people in that company involved in illegal activities," he said finally, his voice low. "Money laundering, embezzlement, and worse. Mr. Dalton is the figurehead of it all, but he's not the real power. He's just a pawn. Someone else is pulling the strings." Claire's breath caught in her throat. Money laundering? Embezzlement? She had no idea what kind of company she had been working for. All she had known was that the job had been a means to an end. She hadn't thought about the people in charge, hadn't given them a second thought. But now, her mind raced with questions. "Who's behind all of this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Who's pulling the strings?" The man's gaze hardened. "That's what I've been trying to find out. But it's not easy. They've covered their tracks well. And now that you've become a problem for them, they'll stop at nothing to silence you." Claire felt a chill run down her spine. She had been fired for a reason. It wasn't about her pregnancy. It wasn't about her work performance. She had become a threat to someone, and they were willing to do whatever it took to get rid of her. She swallowed hard. "What am I supposed to do now? What's the next step?" The man leaned in closer, his voice dropping even lower. "You need to be careful. They know about you. They know you're onto them. And they won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to stop you from exposing them." Claire stared at him, her mind racing. She had walked into this building thinking she might finally get some answers, but now she was even more confused than before. What had she gotten herself into? The man stood up suddenly, as if sensing her growing panic. "I'm not your enemy," he said, his voice firm. "But you can't trust anyone right now, not even the people closest to you. You need to stay out of sight, stay quiet, and figure out your next move." Claire felt a wave of frustration wash over her. "How am I supposed to do that? I don't know who I can trust anymore. I don't know who's on my side." The man placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip surprisingly firm. "You'll figure it out. But you can't do it alone. And you can't trust Mr. Dalton. Not anymore. He's part of the problem." The words hit her like a slap in the face. Mr. Dalton had been her boss. He had been the one to fire her. She had trusted him. But now? She didn't know what to think anymore. "Stay low," the man added, his voice softer now. "Keep your head down. And don't let them see you coming." Claire nodded, feeling a heavy weight settle in her chest. The mystery had just deepened. There was more to this than she could have imagined, and now she was caught in the middle of it. But she had to keep moving forward. She had to find the truth, no matter where it led her. The days that followed Claire's meeting with the mysterious man were a blur of unease and confusion. Her mind raced constantly, trying to make sense of the cryptic warning he had given her. Stay low. Keep your head down. Don't trust anyone. But staying low wasn't as easy as it sounded. Every time Claire tried to return to a sense of normalcy, it felt like the ground beneath her feet shifted. The world she had once known, a world where she had a steady job, a life with clear boundaries, was now a labyrinth of shadows and uncertainty. And the more she tried to move forward, the more she felt trapped. Claire kept her phone close, checking it constantly for messages, calls, or anything that could give her a clue about what was really going on. But there was nothing. The message from Mr. Dalton about meeting seemed to have been forgotten by everyone at the company. Even the man who had warned her seemed to disappear into the ether, his presence now nothing more than a ghostly memory. Yet, there was one thing that kept gnawing at Claire's thoughts: the note. The strange note that had been passed to her that fateful day in the parking lot. The one with the cryptic warning. The one that had known things about her pregnancy, things that no one else should have known. The note had been a thread, one that she knew, if pulled, could unravel everything. But she hadn't dared to look at it since. Not until now. Claire sat alone in her small apartment, the note resting on the table in front of her. It was still. Folded neatly, the paper worn at the edges from the many times she had touched it. The man had said to stay low, to avoid drawing attention. But she couldn't ignore it any longer. She needed to know what it said. Maybe, just maybe, it held the answers she was looking for. With trembling hands, Claire unfolded the note. The paper felt cold and brittle under her fingers. She had seen the handwriting before. It was clean, deliberate, the strokes almost too perfect. Whoever had written it knew what they were doing. She read the note carefully. "You're more important than you realize. There's a reason you were targeted. You're not just a pawn in their game. You're a key to something much bigger than you could ever imagine. Trust no one. The truth lies beneath the surface, and you must uncover it before it's too late. The people behind this won't stop until they've silenced you. But I can help you. Find me when you're ready." Claire felt a chill run down her spine. What did it mean? What was she a part of? A key to something bigger? She had no answers, only more questions. And it only added to the growing sense of dread that had settled in her chest ever since that day. The note was clearly from someone who had been watching her closely, someone who knew her every move. But who? And why had they chosen her? Her mind drifted back to the man who had given her the note. What had he meant when he said she had uncovered something? Could it be that she had stumbled upon something far more sinister than she realized at work? Was Mr. Dalton, the man who had fired her, really the mastermind behind whatever was happening? But before she could go any further down that dark path of thought, her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. Claire's heart skipped a beat as she looked down at the screen. The number was unfamiliar, but she recognized the area code. It was from the same city she had worked in. Her fingers hesitated over the screen for a moment before she answered. "Hello?" she said, her voice steady despite the nervous tremor she felt inside. "Claire?" The voice on the other end was low and muffled, but it was unmistakable. It was Mr. Dalton. Her breath caught in her throat. The last person she expected to hear from was the man who had fired her. But she forced herself to stay calm, the adrenaline kicking in as she tightened her grip on the phone. "Mr. Dalton? What is this about? I haven't heard from you since." "Listen to me, Claire," he interrupted, his voice urgent. "I need to meet with you. This is important. You need to understand something. It's not what you think." Claire's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, not what I think? You fired me without any explanation. You made it clear I wasn't welcome at the company anymore." "It's not that simple," Mr. Dalton said, his tone growing more strained. "You don't know the whole story. I didn't fire you because of your performance, Claire. It was for your own protection." "For my protection?" Claire repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Are you telling me I was fired because of my pregnancy? Is that what this is about?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Claire could hear the faint sound of someone breathing heavily. Then Mr. Dalton's voice came back, this time much softer. I never wanted to get you involved in this, Claire. But you need to understand, you're part of something bigger. There are things happening that you're not aware of. I'm trying to protect you from them. Claire's head was spinning. Part of her wanted to hang up and forget this entire conversation. But something in his voice made her pause. Was this an attempt at damage control? Was he trying to cover up his own actions? What are you talking about? She asked, her voice steadier now as she tried to piece the puzzle together. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. You've uncovered more than you know. And now, they're coming after you. Claire felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She thought of the man who had handed her the note. Could this all be connected? Had Mr. Dalton known about the warning she had received? The cryptic messages were starting to overlap, and Claire wasn't sure whether she was more frightened by the unknown or the idea that her boss had known about it all along. I don't understand, Claire said. Why didn't you tell me this before? Why fire me? Why push me into the middle of whatever this is? I couldn't risk it, Mr. Dalton replied quickly. You're not safe. And now that you're involved, they'll do everything they can to silence you. I can't say any more over the phone. But I need to meet with you. In person. It's the only way you'll understand the full picture. Claire's heart was pounding. She didn't trust him, not after everything that had happened. But deep down, she couldn't deny that this was the break she had been waiting for. It was the opportunity to learn the truth. The only question now was, could she trust him? When and where, she asked, her voice low and determined. I'll send you the details, he said quickly. Be careful. Don't trust anyone. They're watching. Before she could respond, the line went dead. Claire stared at the phone in her hand, her mind racing. Was this a trap? Or was it her only chance to finally get the answers she needed? Later that night, Claire sat in her apartment, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had changed her clothes twice, pacing back and forth, wondering if she was about to walk into something far more dangerous than she had imagined. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had no choice but to meet with Mr. Dalton. If he was telling the truth, then he was her best shot at understanding why she was being targeted, and how to stop it. But the more Claire tried to wrap her head around the situation, the more she realized just how deep the rabbit hole went. She had no idea who to trust anymore, not even the people she had worked with so closely. The thought of going back to the company, back into the lion's den, filled her with dread. But if she didn't confront Mr. Dalton, then how would she ever know the truth? Her phone buzzed again, interrupting her thoughts. This time, it was a message from Mr. Dalton with a time and location. 9 p.m. The old warehouse on Fifth Avenue. Come alone. She glanced at the clock. There was no turning back now. Claire grabbed her coat and headed out the door. It was time to find out exactly who was behind everything. Claire's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel. The streets were eerily quiet at 8:45 p.m., the usual bustle of the city replaced with a ghostly calm. She had told herself over and over again that meeting Mr. Dalton at the warehouse was the only way to find the truth. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she was stepping into unknown, dangerous territory. Her heart pounded in her chest, the sound of it loud in her ears as she turned onto Fifth Avenue. The streets were dimly lit by the harsh glow of street lamps. The buildings here were old, abandoned, and eerily quiet. Claire slowed her car as she neared the warehouse. Her headlights illuminated the large, derelict structure, a building that had seen better days. It looked like a place that time had forgotten, a place where secrets could be hidden away without anyone noticing. Just the kind of place where someone like Mr. Dalton might choose to meet her. Claire parked her car at the curb, her eyes scanning the area. The street was empty, save for a few scattered pieces of debris, and the distant sound of an approaching train. The air was thick with tension. She checked her phone once more, making sure she had the right time and location. It was exactly 9 p.m. She took a deep breath before getting out of the car, her breath visible in the chilly night air. As she approached the warehouse, her every step seemed to echo in the silence. Her mind raced with questions. What was Mr. Dalton really trying to tell her? What had he been hiding all this time? And who was they, the ones he had warned her about? She reached the entrance to the warehouse, which was nothing more than a large, rusted metal door. Claire hesitated, her fingers lingering on the handle. It seemed almost too quiet. No movement, no sound. The darkness inside was complete, swallowing up the light from outside. But she couldn't turn back now. She needed answers. Claire pushed the door open with a creak, the sound of it reverberating through the empty space inside. The warehouse was vast, filled with towering shelves stacked high with boxes and crates. The smell of old wood and dust filled the air. She stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind her. The silence was unnerving, but Claire kept moving, her footsteps cautious as she made her way deeper into the warehouse. There were no signs of life, no sign of Mr. Dalton. It felt like a trap, but she pushed that thought aside. She had to know the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. "Mr. Dalton," she called, her voice a mere whisper in the vast space. There was no answer. Her breath caught in her throat as she heard something shift in the shadows, the faint sound of movement. She turned quickly, but the figure she saw didn't belong to Mr. Dalton. It was a man, a tall, imposing figure dressed in black, standing just a few feet away. He had a cold, expressionless face, his eyes hidden in the shadows. Claire froze, her body instinctively taking a step back. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. But the man didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out something small, something metallic. Claire's heart skipped a beat. A gun. Before she could react, another voice cut through the silence. "Put it down," Mr. Dalton's voice commanded, low but forceful. The man in black hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the source of the voice. Mr. Dalton stepped out from the shadows, his face grim and tired. Claire's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the situation. Why had this man been following her? And why had Mr. Dalton brought her here? "Mr. Dalton, what's going on?" Claire asked, her voice shaky. "I told you not to trust anyone, Claire," Mr. Dalton said, his tone serious. "And I meant it." The man in black lowered the gun, but he didn't move any closer. Instead, he stood still, watching Claire carefully, his eyes cold and calculating. "I don't understand," Claire said, her frustration growing. "You said you wanted to help me, but all I see is confusion and danger. Who is he? What's happening?" Mr. Dalton took a step closer, his eyes scanning the room as if he were making sure they weren't being watched. He motioned for Claire to follow him, and they moved to a darker corner of the warehouse, away from the man in black. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," Mr. Dalton said quietly. "But you need to know the truth. You're not just some random employee, Claire. You've been caught up in something much bigger than you realize." Claire's mind was spinning. "What do you mean? Why would anyone want to harm me?" "The company you worked for," Mr. Dalton began, but Claire interrupted him. "You mean the company that fired me?" "Not just fired you," Mr. Dalton corrected. "The company that used you." Claire's eyes widened in shock. "Used me? I don't understand. What do you mean?" "The company you worked for was involved in something illegal, something they've been hiding for years," Mr. Dalton explained. "And you, Claire, were part of their plan. You were targeted because you were the key to something much bigger." Claire's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying? Are you telling me I was part of some conspiracy?" Mr. Dalton nodded slowly. "Yes. But not by choice. You were manipulated, used as leverage." In a much larger game. Claire felt the blood drain from her face. Who was behind it? Before Mr. Dalton could answer, the man in black spoke. You need to be careful, Claire, he said, his voice rough. They'll come for you once they know you're digging too deep. They have eyes everywhere. Claire's heart pounded as she looked between the two men. Who are you? She demanded. Why are you helping me? The man in black sighed. My name's Jack. I used to work for them, but I left when I found out what they were really doing. I'm here to help you, Claire. But you need to trust me. Claire's mind was reeling. She had always believed that her life was simple, that everything she had done, every choice she had made, was her own. But now, it seemed like nothing had been under her control at all. Everything she had known had been a lie. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Claire asked, turning to Mr. Dalton. Why did you fire me instead of telling me the truth? Mr. Dalton's expression softened, a flicker of regret in his eyes. I had no choice, Claire. I had to distance myself from the situation to protect you. They were watching me, and the closer you got to the truth, the more danger you were in. Claire's hands clenched into fists. And now what? Now I'm supposed to trust you? After everything that's happened? We're running out of time, Jack said, his voice sharp. They're already on to you. We need to move before they find us. Claire's eyes darted between them. This was all too much. She didn't know who to trust anymore. But one thing was clear, the people who had targeted her weren't just interested in her. They were after something far more dangerous, and they wouldn't stop until they had it. I need to know everything, Claire said, her voice resolute. I need to know what I'm involved in. Then we don't have much time, Mr. Dalton said, his voice grim. The truth is far more complicated than you realize. But I'll tell you everything. You just have to be ready for what's coming. The warehouse seemed darker now, even more oppressive, as Claire stood in the corner, trying to process everything Mr. Dalton and Jack had told her. The air was thick with suspense, the hum of uncertainty hanging heavy in the silence. Her heart raced as she felt the weight of the choices before her. This was it, the final moment. The truth she had spent weeks chasing was just within her grasp. Jack and Mr. Dalton stood a few feet away, their tense faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. The world Claire had once known, the familiar, structured life with a job at a prestigious company, a safe place to live, and friends, had vanished. In its place, a tangled web of lies, manipulation, and hidden agendas had taken its place. She had been a pawn in a game far beyond her understanding. Claire shook her head, trying to clear the overwhelming thoughts. How is this possible? Why didn't you tell me this sooner? She asked. Her voice barely above a whisper. She was tired of the secrets, the deception, and most of all, the fear that seemed to have taken hold of her life. I didn't know how, Mr. Dalton said, his voice low. I didn't know how to protect you from this. And now, it might be too late. Claire clenched her fists, frustration and anger boiling inside her. I was your employee, she said, her words coming out sharp. You could have warned me, given me a chance to get out. Instead, you fired me, and now you expect me to just believe everything you're saying? I never wanted to hurt you, Mr. Dalton replied, his voice full of regret. But when you're up against a powerful organization like this, Claire, every move is calculated. There's no room for mistakes. The room felt colder as Claire looked at them both, trying to make sense of everything. She thought about her job, the people she had trusted, the companies she had believed in. All of it seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by a sinister truth she wasn't ready to face. But there was no turning back. She had already crossed the point of no return. Tell me everything, Claire demanded, her voice firm. What was I really involved in? Mr. Dalton nodded, his face serious. The company you worked for was a front. It was never about business. It was a cover for something far more dangerous, something they were using you for. Jack stepped forward, his expression hard. The company was laundering money, Claire. But that wasn't all. They were also smuggling illegal data, government secrets, classified files, things that could ruin countries. They had their hands in so many different illegal activities, and you, Claire, were the key. Claire took a step back, her heart skipping a beat. Me? How could I have been the key? I was just a project manager. How could they use someone like me? You were the only one who could get access to certain files, Mr. Dalton explained. You didn't know it, but they planted a tracker on you. Every time you signed a document, every time you made a move, they were watching. Claire's stomach twisted into knots. You mean, all of that time, when I thought I was working my regular job, I was really part of something much worse? Mr. Dalton nodded. Yes. And the worst part is, you weren't the only one. There are others, employees just like you, unaware of the role they were playing. But you were the one they were most interested in. You were the one they thought could bring everything crashing down. Claire felt a sense of disbelief wash over her. But I didn't know any of this. I was just doing my job. You were doing their job for them, Jack said, his voice grim. And the worst part is, when they realized you were getting too close, when they saw that you were starting to ask questions, they took action. They fired you to cover their tracks. Claire's head was spinning. She had been so naive, so blind. Everything she thought she knew about her life had been a lie. Her job, her co-workers, even the simple daily routines, none of it had been what it seemed. She had been part of a game she hadn't even realized she was playing. Why didn't you stop them? Claire demanded, turning to Mr. Dalton. Why didn't you warn me? You knew what was going on. I tried to protect you, Claire, Mr. Dalton said, his voice filled with remorse. But I couldn't. They had their eyes on me too. The moment you started asking questions, I knew you were in danger. I had to fire you to keep you safe. Safe? Claire repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. How was firing me keeping me safe? How was leaving me without a job, without anything, supposed to protect me? Mr. Dalton looked down, his hands shaking slightly. I thought it would. But I was wrong. I didn't realize how deep you were already in. When I fired you, I thought it would be enough to get them off your back, but I was too late. Claire felt her anger flare. She had been betrayed by the very people she had trusted. But there was no time for anger now. There were too many questions left unanswered. What happened to the data? She asked, her voice steady. Where is it? How do we stop them? Jack exchanged a glance with Mr. Dalton before speaking. The data is locked away. But there's a catch. It's encrypted. Only a few people know the key, and they're the ones running the operation. Who? Claire pressed, her voice filled with urgency. Who has the key? Mr. Dalton hesitated before answering, his voice barely above a whisper. The key is in the hands of the CEO. The one who fired you in the first place. Claire's blood ran cold. I knew it. I should have known it was him. The CEO? Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. The one who fired you? Is that the one you're talking about? Yes, Claire replied, her eyes narrowing. He's the one who orchestrated all of it. I never trusted him. I didn't either, Mr. Dalton added, his tone bitter. But he's a powerful man. And you can't take him down easily. Claire clenched her fists. This wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore. This was personal. The very man who had destroyed her life, who had made her feel worthless, was at the heart of everything. He had lied to her, used her, and discarded her like trash. But now, Claire had something they didn't. She had the truth. And she wasn't going to let him win. "I'm going to bring him down," she said, her voice unwavering. "I'm going to expose everything he's done." Mr. Dalton and Jack exchanged a long look. "You don't know what you're up against," Jack warned. "He's dangerous, Claire. He has connections, resources. People who will do anything for him." "I don't care," Claire said, her voice steady. "He's not going to get away with this. Not this time." As she spoke, Claire realized something that had been building inside her all along. She had spent so long running from the truth, trying to protect herself from the pain. But now, the truth was her weapon. And it was time to use it. The final showdown was coming. And Claire was ready.